Otvo curled his mouth in a wide smile and spread his arms wide open, a custom for his species where they open themselves up and show vulnerability, a sign of kindness. He knew, of course, that many of the other members of Gus, what everybody called the Galactic Union of Stars, saw it more like a fearsome display of their size and teeth. It was a tactical decision that Otvo made, a test, as would be just about everything the next hour or so. Andol, welcome. It has been too long, 4 years since we last met. Andol was a Tranarian, a smaller species when it came to the Gus standard. Around 4'8" was their average height. Compared to the 9'8" of Otvo's species, the Kaed, the height disparity between the two was quite unsettling for Andol. The Tranarian diplomat did not show a sign of being fazed by it, though, and returned the greeting in traditional Tranarian form, by bending down on the forelegs and bowing, arms outstretched behind them. "Blessings to you, Otvo," Andol said as they came back up. "Indeed, 4 years. The Boilesian situation, if I recall correctly." Otvo nodded, the enlarged flaps of skin and meat nodding along with his head. "Yes, that was a pickle. We all did great work. I knew back then I would see you someday again here, I must say faster than I expected. It was a compliment, a rare treat when it comes from a Kaed." "You are too kind, thank you." Andol bowed again. "Follow, please. The room is just down the promenade here. You passed all the tests with flying colors, quite remarkable. The only thing remaining is this briefing. After that, you will be a Gus Inner Circle diplomat." Otvo paused, letting it all sink in. "Not to worry, I am sure you will do just fine." Andol nodded. While the exact nature of the Inner Circle debrief was not known, everybody that thought of taking it knew the so-called attrition rate. Seemingly 70% of applicants that made it that far died. Or, well, disappeared. Never heard from again. Andol tried to calm themselves down. They had excelled at every test. This would be the same. "Now, I know that the debrief is cloaked in mystery, but it is really just us sitting down at a table with a glass of Venularian wine and talking. You will see that there is no real Noir, pleased to see you here." Otvo cut his sentence and made the same greeting again. When Andol looked at the person being greeted, they froze. A human. Andol swallowed and needed a moment to steel their resolve and nerves. Humans were known throughout the Gus as strong, fearsome, and violent, even though their only hostilities had been during first contact. But their resolve and resilience had left an imprint with the other member species. Humans were a tough species, not shy of doing war, and war was something they did well. The Flurock, the species that had made first contact with them and ended up in a 3-month war, admittedly due to their greed and incompetence, were still recovering from the losses. Almost 100 standard years later. "Greetings, I am known as Andol." Andol gave a polite, thin smile. No grand greeting as they had given Otvo. The Flurock and the Tranarians had been planning to attack another species together. Plans that were all foiled when the human Flurock incident occurred. No Tranarian was terribly fond of the humans, especially not with how Gus used them as a threat to any species or nation that was walking too far next to the line they laid out. Twice in the past 100 years had it happened with the Tranarians alone. Andol is with us today to go through the Inner Circle debrief. They have passed all tests with flying colors. Otvo seemed proud, as if he had been responsible for these results himself. Noir returned with a smile of her own, her white teeth a stark contrast with her skolnid tanned skin. The matte silver color, a darker shade, as her natural darker complexion, came through from underneath it, a sign that she would have to get it reapplied soon. A choice not of her own, but out of conformity. Most light species had to take the skolnid tan to prevent health issues later on, when working in the unnatural light of Gudal Prime. The Gus had been moving for years now to change the laws needed to opt for a different light source in the space station. Plenty of options existed that were more friendly to all species. But as with all things, Gus moved slow, and Noir accepted it. The tan came off rather fast when moving back home. She looked forward to it. "Greetings, Otvo. Andol. A pleasure meeting you. I wish you luck with the debrief, but seeing how positive Otvo is, I don't think you will need it." Noir gave Andol an honest smile, then added with a wink, Otvo is really difficult to impress. Believe me, it means a lot to see him this happy. Does not happen often. The promenade filled with the deep baritone laughter of Otvo. Too true, but don't let my wives know that. More laughter. Noir laughed as well, but in a softer, gentle tone. You will have to excuse me, I am already late. She gave a curt bow to the both of them and then hurried off. Not running, but rather moving elegantly yet fast and efficient, the formal dress of black and white seemingly floating behind her as she moved. Andol visibly relaxed, a sigh escaping them. Not to worry, you will get used to meeting them when working here, Otvo said. You meet folk of all the species here. After a while, it is the new normal. None of it gets to you. No matter how scary, disgusting, or beautiful they are to you, it becomes a boring routine. Otvo sounded disappointed with that, a weird notion to Andol, who would want nothing else than to be unfazed by humans. Otvo led Andol further down the promenade and then into a narrow corridor that ended in a door, guarded by a single green stripe. The Gus Peace Guard was called that because of the thick green stripe that ran vertically across their armor and uniform. Otvo nodded at the soldier, who promptly stepped aside and let the two enter the room. Sir. The soldier's voice was stern and curt, a trait found in most of the Vaspied. Andol liked the Vaspied and gave a polite nod as well. The room wasn't large nor small. It was just big enough to hold the table and two chairs adapted to both their forms, with a VAI embedded in the table and a small cabinet against one of the walls. Sit, please, Otvo said as he walked over to the cabinet, taking two glasses, one especially designed for the specifics of Andol's mouth, and a large bottle of wine. This debrief is actually little more than a formality, but a necessary one. You will understand soon when you hear what I have to debrief you on. It has to do with the human situation. Otvo weighed his words as he set the glasses down and poured in the wine. Then he sat down, toasted to Andol's success, and gulped down half the glass in one go. Andol gave a nervous smile and then followed suit. The wine was good, and Andol found themselves halfway in their glass as well. The human situation? What is there to say about that? Hasn't it been stable since the first contact war? Andol asked, his interest piqued. Yes, but the narrative that Gus has woven to the other nations hasn't been entirely an honest one. As a diplomat of the inner circle, you will have to act in the best interest of the whole of Gus, and as such, you need to know the whole truth about it. And we, in turn, need to know you understand the gravity of it so that we can be certain of you acting in a desirable way. Otvo downed the remainder of his glass and waited patiently for Andol to follow suit. Then he poured the glass anew, sipping again, then waiting to make sure Andol was giving him their full attention. See, Gus has been using humankind as a soft threat since those brutal first months. A quite effective threat to keep other member species in line, and to keep those outside of Gus far away enough from our territories. I don't think I would call it a soft threat, Andol quipped. True, but an effective one nonetheless. Otvo took a pause, studying Andol. Otvo knew it was a fruitless endeavor. He wasn't trained in behavioral sciences, but the pause and silence that went along with his studious glare would have an effect on Andol, and that was precisely what he wanted. After a long pause, he activated the VAI embedded in the center of the table. The VAI, or Virtual Administrative Intelligence, was already linked with his personal assisting intelligence, allowing Otvo to quickly interface with the databanks of the VAI, conjuring quite a few documents dense with data and information. As you can see, the stories about the worth of humans in battle and warfare are far from exaggerating, Otvo said as he scrolled through report after report on the excellence and efficiency of humans when they played at war. 3 months of war had been enough to fill the databanks of Gus, that even today the specialist had not yet analyzed everything. They are quite daunting, Andol admitted. The Tranarians had spent the first 10 years hating the humans, throwing any hurdle at them that they could manage, and then they had spent the remaining years fearing them, fearing retaliation. But it never came. Yes, so daunting in fact that by our most optimistic projections, it would take half of all available Gus military force to take them in a prolonged war. Outrageous, Andol said with increased volume, then cleared their throat and apologized. Forgive me, Otvo, but that claim can't be true. You are right, that claim is no longer considered to be true, Otvo admitted, and Andol felt smug, certain that they had just passed another test. Those projections are based on the data we collected in the First Contact War, grossly outdated data. And while we have no data on humankind after that, we can be quite certain that they only improved, by a lot. Projections that take that into consideration are mostly pure conjecture, but let's say that there is not a single projection that tells us that Gus alone would be enough. Andol's eyes went wide, all 7 of them. Do you mean to say that? Yes, I am saying that should a war break out with humanity, it would take all of Gus and at least 2 more external entities to fight on even footing with them. Winning such a war would probably take calling in all possible allies that we can call in. In other words, it would be impossible to win a war against them. Otvo remained stern, seemed not to be affected by the madness he had just spoken out loud. But that means that if any nation ends up in a war with humanity, Gus can effectively do nothing whatsoever? Correct. Aside from diplomatic missions to try to urge for peace, we would be unable to assist. Andol looked defeated at that. According to this data and the current narrative that we have set, of course, Otvo added with a small grin. I am sorry, Otvo, but I doubt that I understand your meaning, Andol admitted. As I said before, the narrative, while based on facts, hasn't been entirely true. See, the inner circle has omitted an important piece of data. Otvo took another gulp and urged Andol to do the same. Even though the humans are seemingly made to wage war, they really do not care for it. At all. What? Andol asked, confused. The humans do not like to wage war. They are disgusted by it, find it barbaric. To them, it is a last resort. Having to fall back to waging war is the same as having failed to them. In all honesty, it is improbable to see the humans go to war. For most reasons, most fear they would. But the First Contact War, it was brutal. The Fluroks still haven't fully recovered from it. Yes, and with reason. Do you know what set off the First Contact War between them? Andol shook their head no. Few do. It is something buried deep in history, known mostly only by humanity and the Flurok. The Flurok found the Sol system and almost immediately knew it was inhabited by an intelligent species. Not just that, but one that was in their space age and had just grasped the intricacies of FTL travel. But instead of going to Gus with the information, they buried it and decided they wanted to try to make a profit on their discovery. Their first move, which would turn out to be a fatal mistake, was attacking a human colonization fleet. The humans found alien life for the first time, and they were brutally attacked. It was only normal for them to retaliate. To them it looked like they were in a war for survival. It was only when Gus intervened and made contact with them that we could clear it all up. Andol nodded. They had known some of this, but not all. Still, the humans had defended themselves very well in their war. A bit too well, according to many species. But aside of that incident, they have never waged war. Not even a single battle aside from dealing with piracy in their systems. But surely they know how you use them as a threat. How come they are okay with that if they are not set on war? Andol asked. A good question. One that I myself asked when I sat where you sit now. Otvo said with a smile. It has a simple and straightforward answer, really. But none of us think like they do. We think in terms of violence and domination. They don't. They agree with it because from their POV it seems like using them as a threat helps to prevent other wars and needless losses of life. That is it? Andol asked, almost unable to believe it. That is all they have told us, and we have no reason to not believe them. So yes. Otvo leaned back in his chair, allowing Andol some time to process it all. Some species were better at that than others. If this ever leaks out, Andol finally said. Otvo nodded. It would be chaos. No more the threat of an iron fist coming down on you. No more certainty. The latest projections tell us that at least 5 member nations would immediately go to war with each other over long-lasting feuds. So while it is a lie by omission, it is a lie we need. For Gus? For Gus, Andol repeated. Their mind was clearly absent, though. Otvo linked the VAI feed into their PAI and went over the behavioral data that was being processed in real time. The software was tailored not only to the Tranarian physique but also modeled on all data they had on Andol, processing over 40 inputs of their demeanor, word choice, breathing patterns, and various other signs, condensing it into a simpler yet still complex view that Otvo barely knew how to interpret. In other words, it told Otvo in uncertain terms what Andol was thinking. Almost. I am sure you can understand why this debrief is needed now. The utmost secrecy is demanded of inner circle diplomats. Yes, I can see why it is needed, Andol answered absent-mindedly. Demanded, not needed. Otvo corrected them. In this we are absolute. As an inner circle diplomat, Gus has to come before all. You can tell nobody about this. You cannot even speak to me about it, unless we are in a secured inner circle location, like this room. Do you understand? This secret is absolute. Andol nodded slowly. Still, they seemed to be deep in thought. Otvo processed the view, displeased with some markers. I require you to confirm that you understand this, Andol. I need your pledge to it, too. At that, Andol looked up. Pledge? Surely you don't mean that I do. All species have a way to show us their absolute devotion. For your kind, it is the Oval Pledge. Andol glared, angry, exasperated. Otvo understood that up to a point. The Oval Pledge was an absolute vow in Tranarian culture, rooted deep in their religion. Once taken, it could not be broken. Literally. The ritual of the pledge included surgically severing a protective membrane in their skull, near the stem of their primary brain. This would be done while a mantra was sung of their pledge, anchoring it in their psyche, a sort of mental training and programming, which resulted in the Tranarian dying from an aneurysm if they ever broke their pledge. It was not 100% certain, but certain enough to use it. A lot more certain than the method used for Otvo's kind. I do know what we ask of you, Andol, but this is something we cannot be lenient in. This is a demand. Otvo finished the last of his wine, then patiently waited for Andol's answer. Although he already knew what it would be, looking at the view. All the markers pointed to Andol being past the decision already. Their mind was probably racing now what to do with this knowledge, how to use it to gain on others. With no human threat, the Tranarians could do quite a bit of damage. Being one of the stronger Gus members, they could vassalize others. They knew how to navigate Gus law. They had been members for quite a while. So their reply was no surprise to Otvo. I thank you for the offer, Otvo, I truly do. But I cannot accept it. What you ask of me is too much. I am not pleased to hear that, Andol, Otvo admitted. Neither am I, but like you, I cannot budge on this. Andol stood up and slowly turned around, heading for the door. After waiting for a moment, they realized the door was not opening up. They turned again, giving a questioning look. You must realize, when I said secrecy is of the utmost importance, I am serious. You know a truth now that we can't afford to go public, Otvo said. I am one of the highest-placed diplomats of my nation. Be careful what you are implying, Andol said, suddenly stern. The markers showed certainty. They were already thinking of Tranarian glory. It is you who should have been more careful, Andol. I am sorry. For a brief moment, Otvo showed honest sadness. Andol had been quite a strong candidate in his opinion. He would have loved to add them to the inner circle. What do you? Andol was cut short by Otvo. Activate Nanpost 7. At the command, Otvo's PAI sent a command in turn to the linked VAI, which in turn sent a command to the hidden nanite controller, concealed in the ceiling. The controller sent out a strong pulse that covered the room. Ah! Andol screamed in pain, doubling down, grasping at their abdomen. What? The wine. It is filled with our latest nanite-based poison, a full generation ahead of the most cutting-edge antidote. It will work fast. What you feel now is the nanites waking up and charging. Once they are done, you will die quickly without pain. You have about 20 seconds. If you have prepared anything for your family before coming here, you can give it to me. I will make sure they receive it. You... Andol gave a glare filled with hatred to Otvo, but then conceded. They reached within their vest and pulled out a small crystal, a data container. For my family. I will see to it personally that they receive this. Rest assured, Otvo said. Andol glared again and seemed to be ready to say something else. but then they'd drop dead. Such a shame, Otvo thought to himself. They had real potential. Then his mind sprung to a more direct need. Noir, she had seen them. She would know about Andol's debrief. He had to make sure to frame Andol's death in some believable and natural way. Too often applicants died during their debrief, and it became harder and harder to hide it all and cover it up. Some things, after all, would still wake the human dragon up, and it was best to let it lay sleeping. "You got all that, right?" Noir asked, irritated in her comms. "Transfer done, we got everything." "Good. New orders, are we finally doing something?" "Negative. Your orders remain the same. Gather intel and observe, never take action." "Fuck," Noir spat, next to her. There was not much space in the service tunnel that she had broken into to record the debrief, especially not next to all the equipment she had to bring with her to breach the inner circle security measures. Always the same. I am tired of these fuckers. They use us as a threat, make us into a monster. I can understand why we allow it to a point. But they are a monster themselves. They have all the hallmarks of what we threw away. They are monsters. We should get rid of them. A rotten wound will fester. Noir, I agree, but orders are orders. Anything else? If not, I will go deliver these to HQ. No. Noir sighed. See you next time, Vermilion. See you next time. The comms cut out and Noir was left alone in the service tunnel. She sighed again, mumbled something, and started to prepare to return.